Hallo und herzlich willkommen zu einem weiteren Video von Gaming Scharf hier auf unserem kleinen, schnuckligen Kanal Scharf und Scharf. Mein Name ist wie immer Christian und wir sind wieder im Bereich Guild Wars Infos. Fliege, hör auf, meine Kamera zu nerven hier, das gibt's nicht. Wir sind Guild Wars Infos und zwar mit dem Video zum Krieger, zu der Reaction auf die Renenet Livestream Vorstellung des Krieger-Elite-Spezialisierung für Vision of Eternity, den neuen DLC, der im Oktober kommt, diesen Jahres 25. Und zwar ist das, wie schon geleakt, der Paragon. Der Paragon kehrt nun wieder Rito als ehemalige GW1-Klasse zu uns zurück. Das ist sehr interessant und sehr cool, weil das doch mal so ein schöner Nostalgiepunkt ist. Seine Geschichte ist, dass wir hier auch in der Tradition der Sonnenspeere die Möglichkeit durch Jokos Tod die Sonnenspeere halt wieder mit ihren Traditionen zurückkommen können, und der Paragon gehört ja eigentlich zu ihnen als sehr klassische Figur in dem Sinnbild, dass der wieder da ist. Ne? Er bekommt seine Flügelchen wieder und er wird mit Gesang spielen und Melodien. Also er wird ein richtig heftig buffender Unterstützer, so wie sie ihn damit hier halt beschreiben. Teilweise sogar, dass wir für eine kurze Zeit unsere Lebenspunkte nicht unter Null fallen können durch die Elite. Videotechnisch haben wir gesehen, spielt er mit dem Speer. Durch das der Speer mit Jantjevic schon reingekommen ist, haben sie gesagt gehabt, hat der Krieger ja schon mal nostalgisch seinen Speer wieder gekriegt. Aber er scheint jedenfalls schon mal laut Beschreibung natürlich nicht an ihn gebunden zu sein, weil das wäre dann richtig mies. So wie das beim Bogen haben wir, im Speerschleuder beim Waldi haben wir immer den Vorteil, das gibt es schon von Grund auf im Spiel, da ist das nicht das Problem. Aber halt, ich habe mir so gesagt gehabt, ich würde ihn dann vielleicht eher gucken, mit dem Stab zu spielen, weil dem Stab, den der Krieger ja schon in Soto bekommen hat, deswegen war es so toll, so absolut kacke. Also der Krieger bekommt den Stab. Ich glaube, er hat ja immer noch keinen Bogen. Er bekommt den Stab und dann im nächsten DLC bekommt er dann den Speer. Und ich dachte, Leute, das ist ein bisschen kacke. Aber beim Stab hatte ich ja schon gesagt gehabt, ob man ihn vielleicht eventuell im unterstützenden Raum mit den Bannern spielen könnte, dass der Bannerkrieger zurückkommt. Aber ich denke mal, in Kombination mit dem Paragon, Banner und dem Stab lässt sich, denke ich mal, was hier richtig Cooles rausbauen. Jedenfalls das, wie es sich beschreibt und wie es aussieht. Er bekommt auch Motivation dazu als Ressource, die sich mit den Salvenfertigkeiten aufbauen. Und mit dieser Motivation, das ist das, was er dann halt ausstrahlt. Alles im Detail soweit seht ihr natürlich hier in dem Video auf die Reaction, ne, die wir gemacht haben. Dementsprechend wünsche ich euch viel Spaß damit.
Then next we'll head into the Paragon.
I think we're all set up here.
Hat den Bogen ausgestattet, okay.
Alright, we have
Paragon ist neben dem Rito wirklich eine,
give me a break here. Talk about this one.
wir aus GW1 wahrscheinlich dann exakt so zurückkriegen.
Right.
Außer, dass wir den Speer
So
beim
the Paragon,
Paragon jetzt halt
obviously
schon vorher
well-known
bekommen haben.
profession from Guild Wars 1. Long asked for it again, like a lot of the ones we've been showing off. We're going to get to Rituals later. Part of the lore is like, in our game, Palawa Joko kind of like crushed the Sun Spears and Paragons, but, you know, spoiler alert, he's gone now. So Paragon as a profession has kind of come back up, kind of latched onto Warrior, and started, you know, inspiring their allies again. Talking about the gameplay loop, where taking what was core to Paragon, it's a heavily supportive elite specialization, and then kind of merging it to Warrior, mixing with its mechanics, how would a Warrior support its allies and command the battlefield as a Paragon once did. So we can look at the UI, and you notice you have your burst skill there, and you also have 3 new buttons, and then a little outline of something that we'll get to. To start, it uses level 1 burst skills like Spellbreaker, because those other 3 buttons, their chance, they'll also be consuming adrenaline, so we wanted to make sure that management was a bit easier. The spec can be pretty adrenaline hungry.
Jetzt haben wir
halt
noch
level 1 burst skills just made
drei
sense.
weitere Fähigkeiten dazu.
Start talking about the chance. That's really where the profession mechanics start, you know, happening, making sense. So we'll hover over
Boah,
Chant of
Macht und
Action. It's
Wut,
going to be
leck
your
mich.
first one. This is going to be
Halt
your more
dich fest.
offensive chant, and it has a couple components here. Pretty big tooltip. The first thing that happens when you activate a chant is it's going to cost adrenaline, normal 10, like a normal burst skill. And for this one, have an initial effect. This one is that it's granting boons to your allies. And then after you activate it, a kind of passive
dann baut
effect
sich
called a
die
refrain
Motivation
will
wieder
start
ab, okay.
activating around you every interval. And so there's refrains. You see there's like 3 levels of him based on motivation. And motivation is a resource that you're going to gain when you use a burst skill. So the general gameplay flow is that you're going to turn on a chant, get a bit of motivation to start, then you're going to want to use burst skills or other chants to build your motivation even higher, so you get high levels of those refrains that are going to give pretty strong bonuses, depending on how much motivation you have. That's kind of the core of what this all says. We can
Oh,
move
der
on
wird
to the
böse
second
buffen.
chant. That's going
Da
to
sehe ich auch
be
schon den
Chant
nächsten,
of
der ziemlich früh
Recuperation.
genervt wird
This one is a lot
wahrscheinlich.
more supportive. It's going to be your healing one. So when you activate this one, you're going to
Also
give
wie
your
üblich, wir
allies
haben
a
jetzt wieder einen
barrier
auf
to kind of
Kraft mit
sustain
Macht.
them
Hier
until
haben wir
the
jetzt
healing
Heilung
pulses
drin
can come
und
through. And as you can
Widerstand.
see, you're going to pulse healing that's dependent on how much your motivation level is, as well as, at the max, you're going to also be able to pulse resistance, pretty strong boon. This one, you can see the motivation cost is higher than the Chant of Action, so it's going to cost more and be harder to upkeep. So perhaps, build up a lot of motivation when you're using your Chant of Action, and then you swap over to the Chant of Recuperation to get those really strong pulses, and so it doesn't completely drain you of the motivation as you use it. And then the last chant that we have is going to be the Chant of Freedom.
Okay,
This one's going to be your more
Support,
utility kind of defensive
Geschwindigkeit,
shout that we have. When you first activate it, you're going to break stun from allies in areas.
Stabilität
It's a
auf
pretty
alle Fälle,
powerful
okay.
effect. And then it's also going to grant boons when you pulse based on your motivation. You can see that
Wenn
it
du dann
starts,
bedenkst,
pretty weak
dass man
with
den-
swiftness, but then builds
das
up. next to
Adrenalin dann halt durch den
resolution,
Kampf die
and
ganze
finally
Zeit
have a really strong
aufbaust,
stability
ne?
effect. And you can see
Weil
that instead
damit
of,
arbeiten die
unlike
ja.
the other two, this one's motivation cost is more scaling. The higher the motivation you have, the more it's going to cost. So trying to upkeep that stability is pretty hard, but keeping it at a low level 1 is going to be a lot easier. So those 3 kind of comprise what you want to be doing. You kind of always want to be having a chant active. You're getting bonuses as you swap between them from activating these chants, as well as just general burst skills in between.
Yeah, obviously, Burst Mastery going to be a great trait to take. Just give you that refund. You're going to be using so many bursts that refund is going to be even more noticeable, kind of similar to when we see it on Spellbreaker, using burst into full counter into burst, getting pretty good refunds there. And that's going to allow you to really set up that motivation and get up to those high tiers, getting that stability or that resistance, those really key boons.
Yeah, I think the thing that you're gonna have to get used to when playing this spec is like extra energy management, keeping the motivation up, being able to track how much you have and how much you want to use, so you don't drain too much, so
Wirkt
you're
auch
able
wieder,
to be able to
also
call on
erstmal,
those high
er sieht ja nur bei den oberen
motivation chants
Fähigkeiten,
when you
ne?
want
Es
to.
wirkt ähnlich wieder komplex wie
Then we
beim
can go
Messmer.
into
Wie gesagt, den
the
Dieb kann ich jetzt
utilities. The
gerade nicht
utilities are gonna be
beurteilen, weil wir den
command,
verpasst haben.
In Guild Wars 1, Paragons had pretty commanding presence on the battlefield. We wanted to extend that to this. These are going to be
Ich hatte
similar
ja
to some
beim
other effects we
Wächter
have.
und beim Baldi ja
In the
bemängelt,
game,
dass mir
as
die
shouts,
nicht so
the
komplex
tales we showed
wirkten
on
wie der
Troubadour,
Messmer.
they're going to be ally
Der
effects
hier,
as you use them.
das ist schon mal eine
And
Nummer
the
anders.
special kind of hook into this is that they all have an echo. So when you use them, an initial effect is going to happen, and then kind of like your chance, after 3 seconds, an echo will happen. But you can speed up that echo by using a burst skill. So you can use your normal burst skill or your chance, but when you activate that, it'll trigger the echo no matter how much duration had left on that interval. So the correct timing, you can really
Das ist diese
really get
Echo-Geschichte.
it like right back to
1900
back,
dann noch im Echo danach.
and potentially get a pretty powerful effect all at once. So starting with the heal, we have We Shall Return.
2 Zustände enorm, das wird bestimmt
First
wieder
part
auf
of it's pretty
einen
simple, a
genervt.
lot like ally heals. You're going to heal yourself, heal allies around you, and then its echo effect is it's going to heal for a lesser amount, but also
Natürlich
cleanse
sehr
conditions.
kleiner Kreis, ne? Also sehr nah.
Pretty
mit
bread and butter what you
360.
want out of your handling slot as a support. And again, timing it correctly, making sure you have adrenaline before you use these commands can make it so that you get a lot of upfront value at once. We can move to the other utilities. The first one we have is Find Their Weakness. This one's going to be a more offensive command.
Boah,
It's going
10
to strike and apply vulnerability to allies around you,
Verwundbarkeit
and
drauf,
then after
5
the
Macht
echo
plus
triggers,
Bonus.
you're going to get Might based on how many
Oder
enemies
lese ich
you
jetzt
struck.
gerade kein Echo? Ach,
And,
da oben.
Pretty offensive leaning, of course. It's a lot of vulnerability and might, so it's a big swing in damage. And as well, it hits 5 targets, which can be pretty beneficial, especially on this spec. As we mentioned, Adrenaline Hungry, 5 hits is, I know,
Nur dürft ihr
5
nicht
more
vergessen,
ticks
dass
of
es hier immer
Adrenaline.
ganz
So it's gonna
extrem
be a
mit dem
good
Schaden
builder for
aussieht,
you.
ne?
It's a low cooldown.
Auf den Golems.
Just a good button to be pressing to keep up, the assault in PvE, PvP, keep your allies' damage up. Next, we can move on to Never Surrender. This one's going to be a more defensive
Okay, ja,
command.
dieses
You're going to break stun
Provozieren
and
und
grant
so.
yourself boons. And then there's a little additional
Und
effect that
Widerstand.
we're trying here. We'll try it in some other specs as we'll see next week. It's going to be a break stun that has a longer cooldown if you successfully use the break stun effect. This is kind of trying to play with the power level we can put on a stun break. So if you use a skill without breaking a stun, it'll have a lower cooldown. So kind of like knowing that you're not going to get the value from the stun break there, so you can use it a bit more and play with how you want to save your cooldowns in a fight. But we can move on to the echo effect for this. This is going to echo and give your allies the same boons. These are pretty important boons, so again, want to make sure that you're able to use that interval when you want it to happen. So can be a pretty
Ist nicht so
interesting.
ungeil.
This whole like stun break recharge increase is new, and definitely something we're gonna keep an eye on and feedback around. It's something pretty interesting. Never been done before. Could be good. People could not like it. Very open to feedback around it.
Gives you some additional decision making of like, there's less opportunity cost in using a skill like this without, if you just want like the defensive component, you want the resistance, you want the resolution, that's much more of an option when it's a 15-second recharge as opposed to when it's a 30-second recharge. So if you just want to use that in
Das
combat
Echo
to
ist
go-
wahrscheinlich das
go
wieder in
aggressive with
Klammern,
the
auch wenn da jetzt nicht
resistance,
Echo
that is
beisteht.
much more of a realistic choice.
We can next command is going to be brace yourselves. This is kind of your basic defensive command. It's going to apply barrier and then more barrier on the echo. So this is one.
Also wir
is,
spielen auf alle
as it
Fälle
says,
wieder
when
mit
you want to
mehr
brace yourself,
Barriere.
you see a big hit coming.
Mehr
Your allies are already
Barriere
at full,
und
but give them a barrier
was
to
wir
make
auch
them
schon
even
gesehen hatten,
more
war ja hier
tanky versus whatever hits about to come in.
Chrono-Fertigkeiten kamen ja zurück
Pretty
und
good.
sowas.
You keep
Und
using
denkst,
keep your allies
haben wir
topped
überall
up
bei
with
den
that
anderen
barrier.
rausgeschmissen. Jetzt buffen wir es
simple
doch wieder
defensive
zurück.
skill. It's what you want out of that slot sometimes.
Gefühlt
Then
habe ich, glaube ich,
lastly,
bisher
we have
jeden, den ich
on your
gesehen habe, der hat
knees.
irgendwas
This
mit
one's
Barriere
also
drin
going to be an
gehabt.
offensive command.
Ah,
You're going to
verkrüppeln,
do the damage and
Verwundbarkeit.
cripple around when you use it. And
Nee,
again,
Schwäche
it's going
meine
to
ich.
hit 5 enemies. That's pretty good adrenaline gain. And then when it echoes, you're going to damage again, more adrenaline, and apply weakness to the enemies, making them do less damage
Also du
to
kannst
you,
mit ihm einen
have less
guten,
endurance
würde ich
in
jetzt sagen,
PvP, weakness, pretty
Schadenssupporter
good
damit jetzt
condition,
spielen.
and with a large radius.
Jetzt
The
hast du sie
crippling here can
gefunden.
be interesting, especially tactics as a trait line that Paragon is probably going to want to take. Get leg specialists, have an AoE immobilize, pretty good effect. So this skill can be, I think, deceptively good based on the minor effects and how you trait into changing what it does. But then we can get to the elite skill, and the elite skill is one we showed, or we talked about in the blog
Das
post,
müsste der
showed
sein,
in the video, and
wo
everyone,
du halt
super
verhinderst,
cool
dass
effect.
jemand auch sterben kann.
Having those Paragon wings, it's We Will Never Yield. When you use it, you're going to get a buff on yourself where you cannot fall below 0, save, some PvE boss effects. But basically, for the most part, you can't die,
Jedenfalls
which
noch mal
is very
ordentlich Barriere.
strong. And then kind of like Rebound is when this buff falls off, you're going to get Barrier, and the Barrier is going to scale based on how low your health was. Because denying death can be pretty powerful, but when damage is like constantly coming at you, you can live
Das
it at
wird dann
1,
lustig,
and
in
then
den
if you don't get a
jeweiligen
little
Rassen dann
bolster after that, you just
den
fall
Text zu
over.
hören.
So that barrier is there. It's a little pillow to make sure that you're able to heal your allies and everyone up when that effect ends. And so the echo here is going to be how you give your allies that buff. So I think out of all the commands, this one is the most important to have lined up with a chant or a burst skill to give your allies that buff. Because it's something that you really want to time well, because if you do it a bit late, it's too late, they're dead. So trying to add a bit of skill expression here, just to add an extra caveat when you use a skill if you want to use it correctly. That kind of covers commands, how they play. So we can move on to the traits. First trait is going to be Rally the Valiant, just talking about motivation and the stuff we covered with the chants. The next minor trait is going to be Inspiring Implements. Gain motivation when you use your 4th and 5th weapon
Gut, klar,
skills.
natürlich, dass du
Kind of a new
wirklich
trigger
deine
that we're playing around with.
Motivation
Kind
dann
of
buffst
influence the
in
weapons
dem,
you
in
want.
dem
Maybe
Ding.
some weapons have a longer cooldown on the 4 and the 5, and that matters to you. You really want that motivation building, so you choose to go an offhand that has maybe lower ones. I think Warhorn is a weapon that you can use the 4 and 5 slot decently freely, so a lot of motivation building built up. But just kind of the gist here is that it's a little extra motivation gain outside of your burst skills. Then we can move on to the Grandmaster Minor, which is Unyielding Resolve. Strike and condition damage dealt to you is reduced for each point of motivation you have. This is going to be a basic defensive trait, something you know, a supportive character would want. You can't heal your allies if you're dead. So just kind of a passive
strahlende
defense to make sure you
Motivationsfläche.
stay on the battlefield, keep healing people.
Dafür stehe ich mit meinem Namen mit dem Daumen oder was?
Then we move to the Adept here. The first one's going to be Call to Action. This one's going to trigger Chant of Action when you get into combat. This will give you those motivation stacks and start the Might and Fury pulsing. It's pretty good to like kickstart how you play in a fight. When you first get into the fight with the spec, you'll want to build up adrenaline so you keep those chants. This one kind of just kind of accelerates that happening. Already gives you basically 10 free adrenaline.
Ja,
so
wenn ich das
in
wirklich
longer,
wieder sehe, jetzt
drawn out
wieder
encounter,
Runde
this
auch wieder
probably
mit
isn't giving you
Motivation
too much
und
value, but I think in small skirmishes,
die Fähigkeiten, die du nimmst und das. Ja, also ich würde sagen, wirkt ähnlich komplex wie der Messmer.
And really just make it feel a bit smoother to play.
As you guys can see, it doesn't put the actual Chant of Action on cooldown, so you can get that initial activation, then even use Chant of Action again to get that extra motivation if you so choose.
Right. Then the next Adept trait, we're going to have Calming Ton. This one is just some small bonuses for
Ja, okay,
a
das
supportive
ist jetzt
trait.
wieder
If,
hier
you know, Chant of Action or Call
Heilung
to Action doesn't
buffen
appeal to you. This one just gives you a
und
bit of additional
das aussieht.
concentration and healing power, so more boon duration, more healing, what you want to be doing as a support. Coming out of the Adept here, just making sure that you always have a chant active to get the bonus.
Ich könnte mir schon vorstellen, wenn du den wirklich
Then
in der
lastly,
Kombi
we
mit
have
dem
Liberating
Liaise,
Stab,
nicht mit dem
it's
Speer
going
machst,
to grant you
plus
increased movement speed, and
eventuell
then
noch
movement
Banner
and parry
reinnimmst,
conditions have
kannst du,
reduced
glaube ich, mit
effectiveness
dem
on
was
you.
Gutes
The
basteln.
movement speed is a thing that we see on a lot of traits. Warrior Sprint, kind of, this is an alternative to it if you don't want to be taking that
Wenn es
trait.
die Banner nicht ganz
But
wegkillt.
the movement and parrying conditions
Weiß
have
gar
reduced
nicht,
effectiveness is pretty new.
wie weit die eigentlich. Bisher habe ich den ja nicht gravierend gesehen, dass die Builds technisch wiedergekommen sind, nachdem sie nochmal angepasst
Cripple
hatten.
will slow you for less, Chill will slow you for less, which can be pretty impactful, especially in PvP scenarios. As a support, you don't want to get caught. You want to make sure you have good positioning, so this is going to help you out with that.
Also allein so schon
Then we
ist
can move
der
to the Master
schon
tier. The first one we have is Brisk Pacing.
pervers, würde ich sagen,
Using
was
a
das
chant
angeht
reduces the
mit
recharge
dem,
of your other chants by a set amount.
mit dem
This is just
Buffen.
going to incentivize you for swapping your chants. You know, don't sit on
Halt jetzt ein
chant to
Wächter
action,
als Krieger,
constantly
ne? So,
pulsing
so
Might and Fury. Want you to
gefühlt.
be swapping between the heal, between the swiftness, the stability. And if you're doing that off cooldown, you're going to get a lot of cooldown reduction for this. So if you have the adrenaline build up to support it, you can be really getting a lot of those, specifically the activated effects a lot. So a lot of power there behind that. Then we can move on to the middle one, which is Invigorating Tempo. This one's going to be a more sustained trait. Heal yourself and gain adrenaline for each point of motivation spent. So again, as with that Grandmaster Minor we talked about, you really want survivability on a support spec so that, you know, you can keep supporting your allies and devote more of your cooldowns to them rather to yourself. And the adrenaline here is going to be a nice little refund. You know, cost adrenaline to get motivation, so getting some adrenaline back is kind of be like almost a burst mastery-like effect to keep it so that you don't feel too starved of adrenaline.
Kriegst einen Adrenalinpunkt zurück, okay.
Then lastly, we have Reverberation. This one's going to be the utility skill trait for the spec. Commands Echo can trigger a second time. So
Gut, das ist ja
going through all
klassisch,
those echoes
jetzt
we
die
talked about,
Commands
the
dann triggern,
intervals,
das ist eine ganz typische
they
Eigenschaft, die
have the
mit
potential with this
reinkommt.
trait to get them all twice, which, you know, Elite, that's a pretty strong effect. But, you know, just making your heal better, getting more barrier, you get a lot of value out of this based on how many of those commands you have. The trigger for this will kind of work as you expect it to. It'll have like the same interval, so you use it, after 3 seconds, the echo effect
Aber
will
es ist
happen,
schon mal
and
nicht
after
so,
another
dass wir jetzt
3 seconds,
zwangsläufig
another
den
echo will
Speer
happen.
haben müssen,
But you
so
can
wie
speed both
das
those up
beim
with
Waldi
the,
war.
burst skills.
Da hatte ich jetzt
You know,
Angst vor,
use
von
the-
wegen,
use the
ja, jetzt
command,
musst du aber die
you
Anti-Wilds
use
haben, weil du
your
eigentlich
burst
mit ihm
skill,
noch
it
den
happens
Speer
again,
buffst,
you can do
aber
the
das
burst skill
haben
right
sie
after,
glücklicherweise
you get that
nicht
other echo.
gemacht.
And get a drink before you cover the Grandmasters.
Früher war es
So the
sonst immer
first
Karl,
Grandmaster
der
is
eine
going to
Tour
be
trinken
Feverish
muss.
Pulse. This one is
Es
going to
wird gar
be
nicht
kind of
seinem
like how
Image
you
gerecht
support with
hier.
boons in game modes. And PvE is going to be Alacrity. And Alacrity support is something that people have known has
Ja,
been
den
missing from
Chronodings.
Warriors kind of kit for a while. So this is going to be enabling the Paragon to step into that role. Hopefully do it really well. Something we want to be seeing people do in PvE. And in competitive modes, this one's actually
Wenn man
going to
das
give
mal auch im
quickness.
Spiel so buffen
You know, in
könnte, wie der
4v4
das hier
compete
gerade in
with
der
those
Vorstellung
Firebrands,
macht.
Tornamancers, that quickness is a powerful boon there, and give it a little edge in PvE to be a more, or in PvP to be a more
Ich
offensive
sehe
support.
schon,
Something
nach
that
5
Warrior is known for when
Minuten
you pick it is
Beta
really making your
hat
allies, giving them a lot of might, making
ja
them
Lord
hit
Hinzen wieder
harder.
alle
So this is kind of like carving out its niche there. With this
alle
trait.
Leggis mit dem gelegt oder
We
so.
can go to the others. If we go to
Ich
the
sehe
middle
das
one, we
jetzt
have
schon kommen.
strengthening stanzas. This one is going to be your more selfish trait. You know, if you don't have allies running around the world, you want to play Paragon. This is kind of the trait you don't want to play Paragon with a group. This is the trait you want to take. You can see that you get a different bonus based on based on which chain you have activated. Chain of Action is going to give you pretty
Okay,
big
damit
damage
buffen wir also
modifier,
nochmal da
chain of
oben die
recuperation,
F-Fähigkeiten,
pretty
ist aber auch
big
nicht dumm.
incoming damage reduction. Chant of Freedom is a really large movement speed. So this has a lot of powerful effects behind it based on which one you have active. In competitive modes, you could also take this. Maybe you don't need additional support for your allies. You just need to be, have that really big damage,
Also im
reduced damage
Gegensatz
incoming or really
jetzt
high
so
movement speed. So you can take this trait potentially and still
bei
be a pretty
den
good support.
ersten drei, die
So a
wir
lot of
hatten,
potential
haben wir
behind
jetzt
this
hier
one.
nicht, dass
And
wir
then
uns
lastly,
irgendeine
we
Waffe
have
hinbeschwören
Enduring
beim
Refrain.
Paragon.
This one
Also er
is gonna
geht
make
wirklich
basic
rein
chance
nur auf das
better as you
Motivation. Er
activate them.
schreit
This
uns
one is gonna
also
crank
die
your
ganze
support up to,
Zeit
like, the
an.
max level.
Das hat nichts
It's
mehr mit
going to
einem
cause Chain of Action
Wächtergeschrei,
grant
der
more
Paragon,
might
der
when you have a
schreit
refrain
mehr.
going. Recuperation is going to heal more, and then Freedom is going to get increased boon duration. And on top of that, it's going to reduce the motivation cost of some of those higher levels. We saw that Recuperation cost 2, it's going to cost 1 now, and then Chant of Freedom, the upper levels will cost less. This again making it so you can keep supporting your allies with
Ist an sich aber angenehm, dass er jetzt diesmal nicht sich eine Waffe fokussiert.
So kind of seeing in all of those ways, different ways.
Finde ich jetzt, was das
support your allies
angeht,
with
in Ordnung.
Paragon.
Gut, wie gesagt, beim
That
letzten Mal
kinda,
fand ich es cool mit dem
covers
Musikinstrument. Es war immerhin
the
was
gist of it.
Neues. Beim Wächter
Cal's
und
gonna
Waldi
hover
war ich ein
over all
bisschen
the
enttäuscht, dass sie auf Waffen
any
zurückgegriffen
other
haben, die wir schon kannten.
skills, or the traits got a lot of good hover time, so I'm just gonna go quickly back through the
Ja.
skills. Yeah, I mean,
Ja.
Paragon is a lot of fun. Like just having
War ja-
more things to
Wer-
spend your adrenaline on, even more so than like Spellbreaker at the F2.
War ja
and
eigentlich
have
das Passende
F2,
dazu,
3 or
weil
4.
theoretisch früher ja der
obviously all the
Paragon ja im
adrenaline
Endeffekt
traits
ja
are
auch nur
gonna
ein
be very
aufgewerteter
powerful.
Krieger war.
But it just gives you like that extra layer of decision making of like, when do I want to use my adrenaline? When do I need to build up more adrenaline so I can use multiple things back to back to back? And just gonna add like a bit more depth to like typical warrior gameplay on top of being like that really strong support warrior that we've really been looking forward to adding to the game. Just quickly
Ja, seit der
through
Veröffentlichung
the
von Vision of
commands here, and
Eternity
then we will
und jetzt den
transition back
Vorstellungen der
to a screen with
Spezialisierungen
just 2 of us on camera,
haben
so
sie
we can
übrigens
set up
ihren
for
Steam
the final
Release-Rekord
Specialization
geknackt.
Day, which will be
Auch wenn es
the
50
list.
nur mehr war, aber sie liegen bei Steam wieder bei über 8000 Spielern aktiv. Das ist schon eine Nummer.
Brace yourselves. And finally, we will never yield. Fire that up one more time.
Momentan ist, so wie ich das verstanden habe, bei meinem MMO alles Tendenz
And I hope you guys
steigernd.
got all your screenshots. If not, check out the VOD after we wrap up here today.
Schade ist halt immer nur so, dass man immer diesen dämliche
Alright,
Gefühl hat,
so
von wegen,
for
wie
the
wird die
Ritualists,
Story, die einen als Storyspieler natürlich ein
shouldn't
Stück
take
weit
too
mehr
long.
interessiert. Und nun befinden wir uns am Ende unseres kleinen schnuckligen Videos. Denkt dran, wenn euch das Video gefallen hat, dann Daumen nach oben. Wenn euch weitere Videos auf unserem Kanal interessieren, dann abonnieren und das Bimmelglöckchen nicht vergessen, damit ihr immer das Neueste vom Neuesten nicht verpasst, was wir auf unserem kleinen Channel hier hochladen. Besucht uns auch auf unseren anderen Social Media Plattformen. Im Bereich Guild Wars 2 ist das Twitter, X und Facebook. Auf Twitter tue ich auch meine Streaming-Zeiten zusätzlich noch posten. Ansonsten könnt ihr auch gerne mal bei Gamer-Profils vorbeischauen. Social Media von Gamern für Gamer. Auf Instagram findet ihr mich auch oder ihr schaut einfach bei twitch.tv/gameschaff rum. Da könnt ihr mich live sehen. Ihr könnt mit mir schreiben oder auch zocken, wenn ihr darauf Bock habt. Alles wie üblich in unserer kleinen stuckligen Videobeschreibung verlinkt. Meine Lieben, macht es gut. Bis bald. Wir sehen uns.